Microphone check 1 1 2 now. Kiwasha nare madhare taonja vibare missing not the siba benko tukatika tistakiku skiza stories.
My name is Wanuri Kahiu. I'm a filmmaker and I live in Kenya. I got into film when I was about 16. I realized that I wanted to make films then. And it just seemed the perfect fit because I was a bookworm and I was a telly addict, so it's what I wanted to do. So I started doing a lot of internships as much as I could to be able to get into the industry. But because my parents didn't feel that film was a strong degree to go as an undergraduate, I studied management science for undergraduate. And then I later went on to do my master's at UCLA, where I did an MFA in directing. I think that filmmaking is a version of storytelling. So filmmaking in the development of Africa is very strong because it's been there as part of our past, it's part of our heritage, it's part of our identity, it's how we remember who we are. It's how we track where we're going and where we've been. So in a very, it's a very integral part of our identity. And I think without filmmaking or without arts that kind of track the progress of humankind, I don't think we would know who we are. I don't think we would have a cultural identity as strong as it can be if we don't have somebody who is recording that process and reminding us who we've been and where we're going and what our ambition is. And I really think that film plays a very strong role in that sense. It allows us to kind of track our past, our history. It allows us to speak with our own voices, to tell our own stories, which is really important considering how many times our own stories have been retold by the other. And now we have a chance to be able to tell it for ourselves, and it can only help in the progression of self and in the progression of culture and nations in a very, very extensive degree. So I've made 5 films professionally. The first one was a short film called Rastar, and it was based on a friend of mine called Nazizi. And it was about a young Muslim girl who wants to get into hip-hop and how she transitions into that. Then I made From a Whisper, which was my first feature film. And From a Whisper was about the bomb blast that happened in Nairobi on the U.S. Embassy. And it was considered the first Al-Qaeda attack outside of U.S. soils. And the reason that I made From a Whisper is because I wanted to be able to tell the story of the people who had been affected in the tragedy. Instead of it being statistics about 200 people died or whatever, I wanted to be able to tell a very inside story about the victims. And I think that some of the victims were the suicide bombers themselves, even though that seems a little controversial, is because they died and they had families as well that they left behind. And to be able to remember people as people who make choices was a really interesting topic for me to pursue. And I needed to be able to tell it from not only the side of the people who lost their loved ones, but also on the side of people who make decisions to perpetrate certain types of violence. And it was important to me to be able to tell that story so that we can learn how to forgive ourselves, because we were really the perpetrators of that violence, we as Africans. It was Africans who were involved in the creation of the terrorist attack. So we as Africans have to take the blame as well. And it was important for me to be able to do those things, to be able to tell the story so that we can learn how to forgive ourselves.
What I loved about this movie is that it takes us behind the scenes. This movie is not about government, it is not about politics, it is definitely not about the West, it is not about what party handles terrorism better than the other, or what civilization is better prepared to deal with terrorism, or what civilization is not about terrorism. This is about real people, it is about families, it is about emotions, from anguish to anger to forgiveness. It is about decisions, personal decisions, from deceit and secrets and lies to honesty and just openness, and finally forgiveness and the process of forgiveness itself. So that is the beauty about it, and I'm sure that there are so many things that we can talk about in this aspect.
I think the challenges of trying to make a film in Africa are really, I'm sure the same filmmakers, independent filmmakers facing worldwide, but a large frustration is not only distribution, because once you make your film, it can never, it's rarely ever seen unless it goes through festivals, but also fundraising. It's really hard to convince investors in the private sector, because obviously the public sector isn't at the moment available to us as East Africans, to invest in you, because they don't understand the concept of it. It's still a very high risk business. So finding the right type of people to believe in your work and to see its importance and to want to help you through it, or to want to invest in it is quite a challenge. And that's what frustrates me more than ever, because my dream is to continue to be a filmmaker and to be able to feed my family off of the money I make making films. And that's really all I want to do. My talk about Afrofuturism and the African. Afrofuturism is considered what speculative fiction, myths, legends, science fiction, and those stories of that genre are to African Americans, Africa, Africa of the diaspora, and Black people in general. Well, the idea of Afrofuturism is speculative fiction or science fiction with Black people in it, really. So it's people of the diaspora, it's Africans of the diaspora, it's Black people in general, people of color. That's what Afrofuturism is considered to be. Now, the reason that I'm particularly drawn to Afrofuturism now, especially after I made my film Pumzi, which is a science fiction film about a young girl who's searching for life. But the reason that I'm more interested in Afrofuturism now is really after I did more research on it, and I did research about the genesis of Afrofuturism, and a man called Mark Derry coined it perfectly, because he said, and I will not quote him exactly, but what he said is, because us as Africans have never had the chance to tell our own history, we haven't had a voice in our own history, Afrofuturism gives us a chance to now reclaim the future. So to put ourselves into the future and to have a space in which we are there to tell our own stories and our voices can be heard. So because we don't have our past, then we claim the future.
You should have taken your medication.
I have been taking them.
I can't help you anymore.
What about the plan?
Well, it's actually very interesting that in Kenya there are more female filmmakers than there are male filmmakers, and I think one of the reasons behind this, Judy Kibinge suggests that one of the reasons behind this, and she's a filmmaker in Kenya, is that because women were always the storytellers in the household, to put a child to bed, or to stop them from touching the fire, or to get them to behave, or to teach them a sense of morality or social consciousness. They told stories. So it just seems the next logical progression would be for more women to be filmmakers, because they're storytellers. They continue in their same role as storytellers, but now just using different tools to be able to get their message out. But of course, it's very important for women to have a strong voice in the arts, because we're very sensitive to what happens in the communities, and we're very sensitive about what's happening in the world, because we have children to bring forth and to teach. And I'm not saying men don't, but I'm saying that women do have a very strong voice in the sense of having just a look at the future, because of the tight connection between them and their kin. They have a way of looking in the future that is slightly different than the logical way that men look. It's a more emotive way into looking into the future. And I think this emotive way lends itself to storytelling and being able to communicate a feeling to somebody else that you've never met before, an audience member you've never met before. So I'm very, very keen on watching more female filmmakers, and also just actors and artists who have something to say and have the sensitivity and the vulnerability to be able to present themselves to the audience. Right now I'm working on an adaptation of a short book, a short story, which was a Kenyan Prize winner in 2007. And we're right at the beginning of working on the script, and I think it's going to be a challenging script to make, just because of the context of it and the story of two young girls from opposite sides of the tracks and how they become friends. It challenges a lot of social norms, and it challenges a lot of the way that we see ourselves. That's what I'm working on currently. I'm also working on a documentary about a Kenyan band called Just a Band. And it's sort of a musical, tongue-in-cheek, fictional, half-fictional documentary about these boys who are great musicians and who have decided that they want to go to space. So seeing their journey as Kenyans who want to go to space, and also questioning the idea of why, because we live in a certain geographic region, why can't we dream that we can go to space too? What I would love to see for the future of filmmaking in Africa is a place that allows the artist to thrive, where you're respected as a professional like any other profession is respected. That we have the opportunities to present our projects to banks or to the private sector, so that we are taken as seriously as anybody else who has a business project or anybody else who has an idea that they want to take forth. And also to be somebody who is allowed to be a seer to a certain extent, to see what is coming in the future, to be able to caution people about our way of life, and also to remember who we've been in our past, and to be the historians of our culture, which is quickly fading and quickly being diluted. So to be those things, I think, is really important for me. I also want to see an Africa where the filmmakers are actually making the money from the work that they're creating. It's really important that we as filmmakers have the space and the ability and the money to be able to create, because our role is important, and it's important to be able to see it as that, and to contribute or to have people participate in, not only as audiences but as financial backers, so that we are in front of the camera and we are behind the camera, and we are as appreciated as any other profession. This is Wanuri Kahiu. I'm a filmmaker from Kenya.